All right, welcome back to the latest edition of the Omni Talk Spotlight Series, where we highlight the companies, the people, and the technologies shaping the future of retail. Now, this one's a little bit different. I'm flying solo today. Anne is, as we say, on assignment. She's working on her killer podcast for the Women's Retail Collective. And I'm excited because today we are joined by a guest who we've talked about quite regularly in the media over the last few years. They've been in the media a lot, especially recently. With activities around Toys R Us, also a new funding round. And we are joined today by the CEO and co-founder, correct me if I'm wrong, Vibhu, but Vibhu Norby of b8ta. So Vibhu, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan, listen to most of your episodes, and it's great to be here.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, it's good to have you. It's good to have you. We've talked about it for a while, so it's good to sit down. Let's start. We always start here, but I think it's always an important place to start. So I think that's the reason we do it. Let's start with a little bit of background on what is b8ta. I think people in the industry know what it is pretty well. Like I said, it gets written about a lot. I think for the casual consumer though, and those people that also listen to our show and tune in, who are you guys? When did you start? What's it all about?
Sure. So we're about to turn 4 years old. We launched our first store December 11th in Palo Alto in 2015. I think most people think of us as a network of stores that focus on innovation and technology products. Mm-hmm. But the reason we started the company back in 2015 was really out of our frustration as a product maker with the retail options that we had for ourselves. And so at the time, my co-founders and I were working at Nest, the company that made the Nest learning thermostat that was acquired by Google. Mm-hmm. And, we spent millions, tens of millions of dollars trying to optimize our big box retail presence for customer engagement, and just felt like it failed over and over and over again. And so we wanted to create a retail experience that was better for brands and allow them to build experiences that were designed for engagement and not for transactions.
Okay.
And as we did that, one of the things that we kind of uncovered as we explored building this company was that the entire model of traditional retail wholesale was broken in so many ways by the internet. And it was broken for small makers who, really had no access to physical retail. And it was broken for big ones who were transitioning their model over to direct to consumer and wanted more control out of their, how their brand was represented in every channel. So that was a couple of the reasons we started the company. I'll just give you, where we are today, 4 years later. We're going to open, we'll be at 27 or 28 stores by the end of this year. We've got 3 concepts in market. So we've got b8ta, which everyone knows. We've got Toys R Us, which is a 50-50 joint venture with a company called True Kids. And we've got Forum, which is our fashion lifestyle concept that we just launched in LA.
Is that open now?
That is open.
Oh, congrats on that too.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, take us through that. And I'd love to go through each of those while we've got you today. Like, take us through. So as a consumer, I'm walking into b8ta. What do I see? What do I find?
So you're going to find a range of products that are out of the box, always out of the box, things that you can try. And we work with a lot of emerging brands who have no other place to really display their products and get hands-on engagement and feedback from customers. And you're going to be able to play with everything in our store. We don't, like I said, we don't lock anything away under glass. There's no plastic demo units for the most part. And it's a lot of the things that you'll see, you just won't find anywhere else. And I think it makes the experience interesting. We get a lot of feedback, including in your last episode, about, products that people don't like. And, because of our unique business model and the service we provide to customers, like it is, you are supposed to see things that are both good and bad. And our business model is kind of ruthless because those bad products tend to leave pretty quickly and the good ones tend to stay for a long time. So our stores have been getting better and better over the years as we've grown.
Interesting. That's an interesting word, ruthless. Okay. So how does that work then? So because I think I've heard you speak a few times too. So basically these digitally native brands are using this space, as you talked about, to showcase the product. And it's meant to be kind of a high touch environment. And some of the brands and some of the products in there, I was just in the new Mall of America store, as you alluded to in the podcast we talked about last week. A lot of them are kind of, I would almost say, they're very unique. Like I think I was looking at a wood. There was, I think Anne at the time was looking at a wood engraver. There was a set of steak knives. There was like a wallet to protect your identity. Like very interesting types of things. How does it work for them? Are you buying the inventory from them? Are they working on like consignment with you? Are they renting the space? Like how does that all work together?
So one of the things that we did when we created the model, like I said, wholesale wasn't really working. And so we invented a model called retail as a service. And you'll actually see this model across industries today. You see it across, especially a lot of
almost every industry today.
That is true. And I think that, it was really modeled after software as a service. We were trying to make retail accessible through the cloud and really easy for brands to sort of onboard themselves into a store. And so everything that you see in our stores is paid for by those brands. They pay a monthly fixed fee. And I think what makes us probably completely unique, even within our category of retail as a service, is that we give 100% of the sales that we make back to the brand. So it's a model that has a fixed kind of downside. You know how much you're going to spend every month in each store. And it has unlimited upside if you have a really good product and you make a lot of sales.
Awesome. And so what do they get for that fixed fee? Like what all comes with that? What's part of this retail as a service?
Yes. So you get access to your space in the store. And so your fee typically flexes depending on how much space you're taking up. Really when we design our model, we take the operating costs of a store, which is for us just the staffing and just the lease. We split that up into the square footage, and then we take our margin on top of that and split it up into the different displays. So you get your space, you get access to our staff. We have really, really good staff. I think they're the best in electronics and some of the best in the industry. And you get access to them in a couple ways. You can train them directly. Whenever you onboard as a brand, we create a lot of training materials. We record you talking about the product and distribute that to all of our associates, which we call beta testers. And then you get access to our software, which is called Arc. And it's also available at arc.com to other retailers. And through Arc, brands can make changes to their experience. So they can adjust how our associates talk about their product, how their product is demoed. They can adjust things like price point and merchandising in the store. And they get access to data as well about how effective that customer experience is on a bunch of different vectors.
That's interesting. What are some of those vectors? Like what type of data are you giving them?
So we're trying to model the customer's journey of discovery in a store with an individual brand. And so we are measuring how many people are seeing the product, how many people are engaging with the product, how many people are getting a demonstration of the product, and obviously sales and returns. And we contextualize that data by giving brands benchmarking so they can see how their product is performing on each of those metrics against their category or against their direct competitors. In some cases, if you make headphones, you can see other headphone data. And then you can see it against your store as well. So you can, I think if you're just looking at data, I know you've looked at a lot of retail data. If you just look at it if you don't understand how the rest of retail is sort of changing, or how the rest of a mall is sort of changing over time, you might think your numbers are getting worse or better every single day, and you're not really sure why. So we kind of strip out all of the noise and kind of isolate these very precise things that brands care about. For example, brands can see through our software, what percentage of customers who demo their product in the Mall of America store actually end up buying that product versus in Seattle, and what that will tell that brand if it's typically at the kind of an outlier, either good or bad, whether they need better training in another store, and so they can execute that through our software, or if things are really good and they need to take those lessons from one store and apply them to the others. But it's something that we've designed in partnership with companies like Retail Next, which are becoming more ubiquitous within our industry. But I'm really, really pleased with how that's developed over the last 4 years.
So Retail Next provides the kind of location data analytics for you guys as you
provide the cameras and the computer vision algorithms, and then we take that data, split it up programmatically. We do lots of interesting things with it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, there's a couple follow-up questions on that then. So I think, so number one, I'm curious, like, so if I'm a brand, like, what's the starting package here for me to get a space in the store? Just out of curiosity, like, what does that cost?
Yeah, it depends on the store. In
Sure.
our most in locations where we have cheaper rent, or the markets, um, you know, labor's a little less expensive.
Sure.
A 2-foot space might cost you $300 a month. In our really high-end locations that are really expensive to operate, might run $2,500 for the same experience.
Interesting. So I mean, it's fascinating to me too, because a lot of what you're describing is actually, you're just a little mall. I mean, at the end of the day, like, that's basically the same business model, aside from the tech side. Let's keep that out of it for now. But it's essentially like how a mall works. We provide you the
Yeah, I
infrastructure, we
think
give you the space, you lease the space, you get to keep all of your sales. Same as the Gap coming into just, 100,000 square foot footprint, right? Is there any difference there, really, conceptually, at the end of the day?
well, there's a lot more software, but I would say, like, yeah, there was this inefficiency in the way that malls were designed, and this is why we have a lot of landlord partners, because not every single brand can fill a a 3,000 square foot box or a 1,500 square foot box, right? They might make one product.
100%.
And I think over the last 10 years, um, that has changed a lot. You have hundreds of thousands of companies who do one thing very, very well, and they do want access to physical space. They just don't want to, or can't afford to land an entire experience. And so we fill that gap for landlords. We provide this next generation of companies really flexible options for getting into the mall. And certainly, yeah, I think the business model is very, very similar. One place where we differ a little bit, like I said, is technology, but I'll explain that specifically. Sure. When you are asking brands to pay for space, the problem of helping those brands understand ROI changes from measuring their sales per square foot directly in the store, which is really simple, to trying to understand attribution more holistically. And so we've spent a lot of time, and we have a whole engineering team here that builds specific tools for brands to understand the value of each store on sales, but in a multi-channel sense.
So are you able to attribute the sale back to the e-commerce activity that you're seeing for individual customers?
Not for individual customers. Okay. Most of the best stuff
from
we
markets.
But we do have a tool that some of our companies use called Brickwork, where they can install like an appointment booking tool on their site, and so some of our high dollar products, like I think Anne in the last episode had mentioned, we have a very expensive product that she's not sure who it's for, but they, most people don't walk into a store and spend $3,000 on something. These are customers who've been doing a lot of homework, and so they book an appointment and they come in and try it with us, and they go back home.
So then a couple of questions, like, so how big can the store footprint be? Because to be honest, like, some of those numbers that you just mentioned in terms of the space and what it costs, that might preclude some of the types of brands you're working with from getting bigger in terms of scale. So, like, how big do you see in terms of, like, as you're talking to investors or whomever, or as you're thinking about this strategically, like, how many b8ta stores do we eventually see in the market?
I don't think we ever saw b8ta as a brand that would itself have more than 150 locations. I didn't think it was a 2,000 store target type business, and it was because it was designed around this pretty small category of goods, like these up and coming emerging technology companies. And so as we thought about expanding the business, we had a choice to make. One was, should we grow the store footprints and put more and more categories into the same kind of brand halo as b8ta, and effectively become a department store, but with a re-engineered model? Or should we take our business model and try to apply it in these smaller format stores in a bunch of other categories? And I think we kind of landed on the second approach, and you can see that playing out this year. But I think if you just look at how what kind of real estate is available, those really big boxes are just not. They're not interesting to customers today, and I think that they can become really unfocused. And so we wanted to make sure that because I think the fundamental promise of b8ta is focus on the demo for a brand. We want to be able to deliver a really high quality demo, and that's our goal. And if you want to, we started testing apparel in beta, but we didn't have fitting rooms, we didn't have mirrors, we didn't have like the basic infrastructure. So we started thinking about how we could break these out into these smaller format locations that had these purpose-built experiences for those products.
So that's all you think it'll ever be at this point? Is it'll be, give or take 100 stores at this point? I mean, that almost makes it sound like it's going to be a very coastal model. It's a very urban, kind of high demographics or high attractive demographics and income kind of model. Is that right?
I think b8ta itself as a brand, I think it's going to be limited to probably 150 stores in the US, maybe 300 globally. Mm-hmm. But we're taking our model into a bunch of other categories, and maybe one day we'll bring those all together as well. But
and let's talk. Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, let's talk about that next. Yeah, I mean, because it does when you throw out the numbers that you did, like say $300 a month on the low side, $2,500 a month. With the brands you're working with, if you tried to get up to 1,000 stores, there's no way that would be tenable for those guys to pay, that type of fee. They'd be just better off trying to do it themselves.
Well, I don't think anyone should have 1,000 stores in this retail era. So I don't think that's limited to just us. I think our model is functionally the same as wholesale when it works really well.
Why not? I could see Lulu, like maybe not 1,000, but I mean, I could see Lululemon having 600-800 stores. That's a pretty strong brand. They're doing a pretty good job in terms of what they're trying to do, as an example.
I just think that once you start getting past a couple hundred stores, you start having to consider very, very secondary, tertiary markets where a lot of those customers will be better off just purchasing online. I don't know, I can't say for certain whether that's the case, but we're not, the kinds of brands we're working with are things that you want, not need. And,
well, hold on a second, because that's interesting. Because so what does that mean for Toys R Us? So you guys, I mean, you're essentially running the same model for Toys R Us in that partnership, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's differences, but if those issues exist, what does that mean for Toys R Us as everyone's out here talking about this? Is Toys R Us going to become potentially what it was, or is this going to be a limited model for the coasts and the big cities and people with more money to spend too?
Well, the merchandise is different. So, we have a lot of, the average price point in that store is probably 1/10 of the average price point in a b8ta store. So it's designed for it's designed for that category, and toys are just in general cheaper than electronics. But
does it work the same way though, where the vendors are paying you for the space?
Yeah, it is exactly the same model, I think. Okay. And I think the same philosophy applies just in terms of number of stores. Like, I don't think the plan is to open 600, 700, 800 stores again in strip centers. We are focused on opening them in really high quality, streets or really high quality centers where there's already built-in traffic. We're not worried about, like Mall of America is an example of it's the death of, I guess I would say, like, the death of the mall has not been equally applied across all types of malls. It's been really focused on a specific type of mall asset. And so we want to align our retail growth strategy with the way retail is going, which is centered on these top 100, 150 centers and streets.
Yeah, which also makes it sound like it's not very middle America either in terms of what its ultimate reach is.
This is, I think that's a really complicated question, because there's, a mega trend for the entire world has been people moving to cities. And, our stores today are already very, very close to like 70% of the population of the country. So
yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's easy to say when you're sitting in Palo Alto or in California. That's a hard one. I think that's a trend, but there's still a hell of a lot of people that are living in other places that need retail. But let's talk about that a little bit. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, because there's ways to reach those consumers through technology too. So let's talk more about the platform. So the one question I had, like, all that attribution and everything makes sense, but like, how does that work how does what you guys are doing in the long term work when you've got different options like scan and go mobile technology that gives you even more definitive attribution, more definitive links to e-commerce? You've got Amazon coming with scan and go. You've got companies out of Israel like Trigo that are doing a lot with computer vision and checkout free technology with companies like Tesco in London. Like, how are you guys defensible against all that they can do from the same analytical and attribution perspective, but almost more so in mass, given the conversation we were just having?
Yeah, I mean, all of the examples you gave are focused on servicing customers' needs, and we're not. It's a different type of retail that we're enabling, right? We're almost everything we carry, including in Toys R Us, are by definition not things that you need. They're not your daily essentials, and so in that universe, transaction speed is not the key attribute of the store. We're not designing our stores for efficiency. In fact, it's the opposite. We want people to spend as much time as possible with us and learn about a lot of new
Yeah, but
things.
transaction speed's always important. I mean, I was just in your store and I hit the button and had to wait for somebody. And if I could have made it a self-service experience, I could have. So like that always is a thing, whether you're in apparel or anywhere.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know that that makes sense.
um, I would just say our contrarian viewpoint and the kind of retail we're building is just not focused on checkout speed and efficiency. And we've never once had a conversation about how to make that. I think you know, we
So
have,
what is it about then? Who's the core customer for b8ta and then across
yeah,
Toys R Us and even what's the forum? Like who is that core customer then who's coming in
so
for these types of
we have
experiences?
two
They're
different,
probably all different, right?
yeah, they are, but we have two different types of customers. We have the customer who is coming in specifically for a brand. That's about half of our traffic. They're there to get a demo of the boosted board. They're there to get a demo of Ergo, or Turing Tumble, which is a Minneapolis-based company that we started working with.
Mm-hmm.
And they may happen to discover other things while they're in the store, but that's not why they came in. And then we have half of our customers are just walking in to see the store looks interesting and they want to have a good time and discover what's the latest. I would say, as I said before, and I'll say this to my deathbed, like our stores are designed to provide demos of products. And if you're a customer who doesn't, if like you don't need a demo of toilet paper, right? But you might want a demo of this of the latest Lego product. You might want to see something out of the box. And if you do, then you'll come in. And we're not trying to capture every single possible shopper. This isn't Target or Walmart. It's not designed for everybody and for every use case of retail. It's designed for that specific demonstration experience.
Yeah, here's a tricky part for me to understand, and this is where I still try to have trouble wrapping my head around what it is you guys are doing. I mean, $50 million for the platform arc, which is all about.
$100 million.
How much was it? 100 million. Oh, excuse me. Actually, yeah, no, I apologize for that. Oh, in total. Okay. I apologize for that. That's a lot of money. And so, to do what you're talking about, I think at the end of the day, like you have to have that full omni-channel experience. You have to have that connection to e-commerce. So like why, for example,
We actually
TR,
we're not
go ahead.
focused on e-commerce at all. In fact, when we launched the company, we didn't have e-commerce because most of the brands that we worked with already had a robust direct strategy. And so we weren't trying to conflict with that. We were just trying to give them a tool that, the tool of retail, which is much more difficult for them to do on their own.
But how can you, I don't understand how you can say that in today's day and age. How can you, if you're going to be the platform for e-commerce, and like I talked about, like say whether it's, a scan and go type shopping arrangement where regardless of the category, you're connected to what's happening in the online universe. If you're going to be the platform for commerce, isn't that an important element?
This is a big difference between our model and wholesale, right? We're not trying to be the one channel that every customer discovers and buys in. Like our typical, like I would say 100% of the brands that we work with, they started online. They already have a really robust e-commerce experience that they've been developing for years in some cases. And we're never going to make an experience that's superior to that. They may have specific business models that are running on their website that we couldn't replicate. They may have subscription packages. They may have replenishment models. We're not trying to build all of that into an e-commerce site. I think we are trying to fill this physical gap that they have. They do not have a physical presence. There's nowhere their customers can go to see these things. A lot of their customers demanding to have to see these products out of the box before they buy. And with our platform, they can do that in 30 cities and one day 150 through the internet without having to talk to anybody quickly and in a pretty economical manner.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced. I guess you're just not convincing me that that's why that there's that many people that want to do it exactly that way. I mean, there's a lot of friction in terms of how you're describing this too. Like if people are controlling their own prices in these stores, like let's take TRU, for example. If people are controlling their own prices as the vendors in these stores, and then they go online to shop for them, what prices are they seeing? Are those consistent? Are they different? Like, how do you keep that all in control in terms of what's happening in the e-commerce world against what's in the store?
Okay, so if you talk to a typical modern brand, they're extremely concerned about consistent price points. They don't want their wholesale partners to price their products competitively. That's why they have MAP pricing. I mean, it's illegal to price fix, but if you walk into a typical store and you look at Google products, for example, they will always be the same price. There may be bundles and other kinds of sophisticated schemes to try to make the price look lower, but when you buy that product, it is almost always the same price in every channel. It's a big myth that, like, Amazon, for example, is selling products at a much cheaper price than.
I got to disagree there, because that map pricing is one thing, but advertising is completely different. So, like, for example, like, I'll tell you where that's probably wrong. I don't know this for sure, but you can comment on it. Like, say I walk into Toys R Us. What's interesting to me about that, Target's running all of your e-commerce. So if those vendors are controlling their own prices in terms of the space they've run it and what they have on display there, and Target's running their general Black Friday promotions, which are Target wide, and you're getting incentives on that, those prices aren't calibrated. There's no way you can tell me that they are.
There's incentives, but the actual price of the products typically for the.
It's not how consumers think, though, man. Consumers are thinking about the price they're taking home, not the price that the actual brand is saying is mapped or whatever it is. Right?
So here's what I'll say. If you talk to a typical brand, they want control over pricing in all channels. And we're building the store for brands that we wanted ourselves as product makers. And even if it doesn't work that way in every single big box scenario, I can tell you right now that if you're trying to attract the business of these up and coming next generation companies, this is the kind of platform that they want, and this is the kind of control they want. And this is also why at a typical Target, you don't see most of these up and coming brands, because when they talk to the buyer, they're not getting the things that are interesting to them. They're not getting the things like price control. They're not getting control over where they are in the store, which categories they're in.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think it's the buyers are deciding what is most important for the mass market at the time. I was the guy that brought Nest into Target for the first time, the company you guys used to work for. So, like, I don't necessarily agree. I think it's hard. It just means the bar's higher. In fact, I would argue that digitally native brands have more assets at their disposal to get recognized by physical retailers than they've ever had in the past as well, just because there's so much of a connection they can make in the online world via e-commerce to have that one-to-one direct relationship with their consumers at all times.
I'm sorry, but it's just not true. Like, if you look at a typical big box store, like, there just aren't very many direct to consumer brands in there. Like, name.
Yeah, but Vibhu, at the same time, you're saying your stores can't get beyond 100 stores. They can't even get to the rest of the mass market. I mean, I think at this point we can agree to disagree on this, but I think it seems like to me that there are some fundamental gaps in terms of the connections of e-commerce and just how big the business model can scale. So yeah, it might be applicable and it might be valuable. And I think you're also assuming that it might be valuable to people that like want to shop the way you do, but I'm not sure how many people.
So let me ask you a question though. Why does it have to be 2,000 stores for it to be an interesting business?
It doesn't, but it needs to be connected to e-commerce and it needs to be available to people, like, essentially. You could have a small business for sure, but it's not like it's going to revolutionize the way retail's done in total. Like, if it can't get to that type of scale.
Well, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because, I would say a lot of retailers are testing our exact model. And the reason they're testing it is because they're having trouble attracting these up and coming brands. We have a partnership announced with Macy's, but there are more coming that are other retailers that you and I both know, and there are plenty of retailers like Kohl's that just announced this program called Curated. When they're like, the retailers are
they using you guys? Is Kohl's using you guys, or is it just Macy's using you for that type of thing?
We've only announced Macy's today on their.
So Kohl's can attract the brands, but other people can't.
So okay, this is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
These programs that these retailers are running an alternative business model like ours. And that's because this is what these up and coming brands want. They don't want to do wholesale. That is just like, talk to these brands. They don't want to do wholesale. They don't like the way it works. And this type of model doesn't have to be exactly ours, but this type of model is attractive to them where they get more control. Every brand wants control over their story in every channel. That's why they started the way they are. That's why they they don't have sales teams in a lot of cases. They don't even
Right,
have
but it fundamentally, but I get what you're saying, but it fundamentally caps your growth. That's why wholesale exists, or that's why people create their own stores. So it fundamentally caps your growth until you want to go to those places. That's all I'm saying. I mean, retail's existed forever. I mean, that's just, what's that?
I don't know what that means. What do you mean by capture growth?
So if I'm a brand, right, you're telling me brands, they don't want to go wholesale, right? You're saying that's what you keep hearing. Well, fine, they don't want to go wholesale, but if you don't do that, it caps your growth, because ultimately, if you're going to reach the full market of people, you either have to go wholesale to get all those placements on shelves like we've been talking about, or you have to start opening your own stores.
Well,
because not going wholesale the way you're talking about it, as you gave me the numbers, is prohibitively too expensive.
Let me ask you though, what is the fundamental property of wholesale that makes it different on that vector for brands?
It's a different sharing of the risk.
In what sense?
The retailer and the brand are I would say more equally yoked than in terms of like how you've got it here, which is like, okay, you're just renting the space. I give you a few like infrastructural things and then just let it happen. I mean, like I said, essentially you're acting as a mall at the end of the day.
Okay, so I think that wholesale is designed for this outcome of getting you a product as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. And I think there are a whole class of goods where that makes a ton of sense. Cosmetics in some cases, CPG, grocery, but there are equally large number of product categories where that mentality just doesn't apply. And those brands have never done wholesale, and they certainly not going to consider being in 2,000 Target stores ever. And they would, even without b8ta itself, they would never be opening more than, if they're opening their own stores, they'd never be opening more than 150 stores. So I guess.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's up. Those are upper cachet brands, and like you just said, they might open their own stores. But again, that's a limited market size too. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not decently good businesses, but at the end of the day, we're still talking about niche cachet brands. I mean, you guys are selling $1,500 electric bikes in your store. I mean, it's a pretty niche thing at the end of the day. So yes, for those, yeah, for sure, that's not going to find its way onto a Target shelf or any mass merchant shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, right. I mean, but that product universe is very limited. So when you talk to me about how this model can then extend out and other retailers are trying to get into the business, I don't think it's limited at all. I don't see how that works.
I don't think it's limited. I think if you look at the average merchant on Shopify, they have a million brands on there. I don't think those brands have designed their business or their product for sitting on a box on a 4-stack shelf in Target. I just think that the future, like every brand that was invented post 2008 has a different strategy, and they're going to want options like ours. They're not going to want options like a typical big box store.
Yeah, but I think that's unfair to say that the big box stores can't pivot or other physical retail entities can't pivot. And that's where I brought back the point too of like, there's other ways to still do what you guys are doing from an attribution perspective, and why the linkage of e-commerce is also so important. But anyway, wow. Good discussion. Definitely a good back and forth there. A lot to think about. And hey, the listeners can decide based on the listeners and watchers, actually, because we've got this on video too, can decide exactly kind of where they come down on the side of the argument. I think, as you can tell, still a lot of questions for me. But like I say to everyone, when I write anything, talk about anything, hey man, best of luck and prove me the hell wrong is what I would say. Like, get out there and get it done. And I wish you guys nothing but the best of success. Congrats on the opening of everything you have related to Toys R Us. Congrats on the opening of the forum, because no matter what, you guys are doing some cool and interesting new things, and you're testing the way all of us think, as you can tell just from the conversation we had. So I appreciate that. I love that. Hope you have a good, Vibhu, I hope you have a good time with the family here last week and then heading into the holidays. And for everyone listening out there, of course, be careful out there.